Assalamu alaikum and good evening, ladies and gents. How are you guys doing today? So good to be back for another episode of Coffee with CEO, the place where dreams take the mic and success stories unfold. My name is Taha Hussain. I'm your host and hopefully guide through this incredible journey of entrepreneurs who've dared to dream and turn those dreams into a reality. We've got a special treat for you today. Joining us today, as promised last week, from the captivating world of startups and innovations, we've got Mr. Khurram Mohsin, and our guest today is no stranger to the entrepreneurial roller coaster either. His story, I'm sure, will leave you enlightened and, of course, motivated as well if you're looking to do your own gig. So get ready and buckle up and let the entrepreneurial magic begin. This is Coffee with a CEO. Stay tuned. You're listening to Heritage Radio on 90.6 FM. Get in touch with your questions. You can call us on 0161 883 2255. That's 0161 883 2255. Or you can WhatsApp us on 07751 939396. That's 07751 939396. Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gents, and welcome to another episode of Coffee with a CEO, where dreams take the mic. And we have an absolute special treat for you today. Our very first guest, as promised last week. Joining us today is a serial entrepreneur, Mr. Khurram Mohsin. Who is absolutely no stranger to the captivating world of startups either. And before I get into all of this, what I've just discovered is that we also share the love of Abda Parveen, apparently. Mr. Mohsin, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam, Taha.
How are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. Thank you for having me on your show.
So good to have you here, buddy. So good to have you here. And I must say, during the Abda Parveen song, where did you hear her live?
That was in Bridgewater Hall in Manchester. She was here back in 2012, I believe.
2012, that's a while.
That was a while ago, absolutely a while ago.
You're showing your age there a bit.
Maybe I was a young kid at that time.
11 years it's been. 11 years on air. So how was the experience?
It was mesmerizing. It's very difficult to put that into words. Let's put it this way. You just go into an amazing zone. When she starts singing, she definitely has got a magical voice. And the lyrics, they're amazing. The one thing which was really surprising for me was because, of course, I'm from Pakistan, so I do understand Urdu very well. And that's my mother language. But even the people who could not understand the lyrics, looking at them, and they were absolutely mesmerized as well. So her voice definitely has got a magic in it.
Oh, certainly. You know, obviously I haven't heard Abda Parveen live, and I would absolutely love to the next time she's in Manchester. And I hear that it's going to be soon, inshallah, and when she is, I'd love to do that. And of course, if you're interested, we can go together.
Absolutely.
But one regret that I've always had is not being able to listen to Nusrat live.
You know what? Now I'm really going to show my age because...
Oh, don't tell me you've done it.
I've done it, and that was in Bourbon, in Pearl Continental Bourbon, and that was in
PC Hotel. Yeah,
I heard him live in 1993, And at that time, I was definitely a child.
Well, you say that now. Right. Yeah. I'm sure that would have been amazing. I'm sure that would have been amazing.
Absolutely. It was an open air concert and it was amazing.
Was it in the place they had outside where the steps are at and with a beautiful view in the background?
Yes, you're right.
Oh,
absolutely.
Lovely.
It was amazing.
Lovely. I did have the pleasure of listening to some of the folk heroes that we have in Pakistan. And of course, growing up in Pakistan back in the 80s and 90s. And, the folk music was the way. You had the likes of Junaid Jamshed, you had Strings, you had Junoon, I think, it was another one. You had a couple of other solos as well. Vital Signs through Junaid Jamshed and others. But mostly on PTV, I remember it used to be all folk songs.
It was
every day. We would listen to it, and we grew in an era where that was the taste of the nation. It was considered our own. That folk music was a very Pakistani thing. You didn't hear it anywhere else.
Yes,
and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. But even though I'd love to talk to you about this for hours and hours and hours, unfortunately, this show is not called Coffee with a Music Lover or a folk music lover. It is Coffee with a CEO, and thank you very much, Khurram, for accepting the invite.
My pleasure.
And I'm very excited that you're here and to be talking about this. So, I've known Khurram for a very long time. In full disclosure, I've known him for years and years, and I've seen him for years and years in doing a lot of work, a lot of great work in his own field, and I've also seen him over the years doing a lot of work around trying with different startups, whether it's in tech, whether it's in retail. I've definitely heard some failed ideas. I've also seen you really struggle with some. So today, the idea, Khurram, is to be able to understand your motivations of doing what you did.
Yeah.
And also, well, we'll start with an introduction, but understanding those motivations, why, the hows, the challenges, and possibly some of the successes, right? How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Brilliant. Shall we start with an intro? Do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, Khurram?
So the bit about myself, I graduated back in 2003, and then I went on to do my master's program. Right after that, I was in IT. IT was doing quite well, booming at that time. And I went into consulting world. And then over the next 7-8 years, I'm consulting. So it was slightly different from doing a normal 9-to-5 job, going to the same office. You're finding challenging. You're going from client to client and traveling across the world, I would say, not just the UK. And then comes a point where you reach a ceiling. And then for some people, that's fantastic. You reach a point in your life, you're happy, you're making good money, everything is going well. But then other people, they start to think that, what more? What more is there to life?
Okay.
There's certain things you want to do where you want to have absolute control.
Right.
That's where the thing is that, and you can have like your own thing where you build something. So I went into a couple of startups where we try to do some tech startups.
Okay.
It was challenging.
Right.
All I would say is for anyone looking to start something, yes, we hear all the success stories,
right?
But there's a lot of grinding, there's a lot of hard work which goes behind it, and then we hear about all the success stories. What we don't hear about is that how many things actually did not work.
Right.
And how many times sometimes you have to fail quite a few times to learn, and then you're ready to start.
So, we'll get to the challenges. We'll definitely get to the failures, Khurram.
Yes.
And we will get to your successes, right?
Yes.
We'll get to all of them. The question I have for you, and this is the first question, I'm sure everyone listening in right now, and by the way, if you are listening in, get in touch. Get your questions in. 0161 883 2255. That's 0161 883 2255. Or WhatsApp us on 07751 939396. That's 07751 939396. The first question I have for you, Khurram, is you touched upon this, but you said, right, you wanted what you thought, what's next?
Yeah.
What was going through your mind? There's got to be some inspiration. That particular moment where you sat down and said, do you know what? I'm going to start my own gig. Talk me through that. What was it? What was the thought process?
Right. Okay. So for me, I always take very calculated risk.
Okay.
And I always follow a lot of process before I get to do certain things.
Okay.
When I got married in 2013, my wife has a completely different view to the world. And she's
Right.
the one which is like, let's go take the risk. So my first business...
You do know she's listening in right now.
I've got to go
I'll be
home.
very careful when I say it.
I'll only say the positives. I'll be... Remind me.
Right.
So I think just having a great partner really
Right.
helps.
Right.
So she's the one who actually kind of inspired me that, look, we need to go. And then she had a bit of a business background.
Uh-huh.
And that was my first play around with going into entrepreneurship and then starting something. And then since then, we've done quite a few projects. They're projects which literally, I would say that if I look back over the last 10 years, there's at least been 5 or 6 different projects I've been involved with.
Right.
But what triggers to me is you want to have this desire to build something,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whether it's in retail, whether it's in tech, whether it's in construction, whatever it is, and see that thing grow.
Okay.
And then have the pleasure that, look, I have made a difference. I have actually got something and it has taken it to success.
Right.
So for me, it has always been doing a job is fantastic. I'm not against the job. I'm still involved in a consulting role.
Mm-hmm.
But over there, you get told that this is the project we need you on.
Right.
These are the things we want you to do.
Right.
You don't have that free hand and then the free will that I want to take this thing from this point all the way to the end.
Mm-hmm.
So you have control, but with that control comes a responsibility.
Okay.
So once you're ready for take that thing, then yes, that's what has driven me to be able to do something which I can call of my own and which
Okay.
I know can make a difference and where I can make the decisions. And then eventually I'm responsible for the success or failure of that thing.
Okay. So to summarize, and do correct me if I'm wrong here, but your inspiration mainly would be to plant this seed
Mm-hmm.
and to see it blossom into a tree.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
yes.
you can own this baby of yours and say,
Yeah.
right, I started this with my own hands
Yep.
and I've seen it grow.
Absolutely.
Is that fair to summarize? Is that a fair summary?
That is indeed. Because
Okay.
the pleasure you get, the satisfaction you get that you're achieving something
Okay.
rather than just following a normal path which someone else has designed.
Okay. Fair enough. You mentioned calculation.
Yes.
Right? You said you're a very calculated. I don't forget things, you know. You said you're a very calculated man. Now tell me this, Khurram. What
Mhm.
calculations did you do? Let me rephrase that.
Mm-hmm.
What challenges and opportunities did you see in the market
Right.
before you thought, do you know what? I can address those challenges and make the most of those opportunities. Let's talk about your first one. Right? Your first one.
My first one was an established business already
Okay.
in the Middle East. And that's where my father-in-law, he was running an established business over there.
Okay.
And we just decided to branch it out in Europe.
Okay.
So when I say calculated one, so as you can see that the first one wasn't really just going out in the wild without knowing. There was a lot of calculation. There was a lot of pre-work already done. And there was a lot of success behind it. So
Okay.
it was easier to work it out that what is exactly required. And there was a lot of guidance from my father-in-law on that one. But then again, we learned that things which apply to a certain market apply differently to the European market.
Mm-hmm.
When I say the calculation, we look at the market segment size. We look at what competitions are out there, what they're offering. It's a cliche, but you look at the USP, how you're going to stand out from the market,
Mm-hmm.
what share of the market you can take. And when I say I'm a very calculated person, I always go with a bit of a pessimist idea that instead of, let's say, somebody saying you can take 1% of the market, I'll probably just say I'll start with 0.1% of the market.
Right.
And then see if that works. If I can handle that situation, then yes, anything I get more than that,
Mm-hmm.
that's a cherry on the top.
Okay.
So yeah, look at the market segment. If there is out there, look at your competition, what you're
Okay.
going to face. and look how you're going to offer something different than that. Because one thing you really don't want to do is, a lot of times we see people, they look at other people's successful ideas and they say, right, I'll just copy that. And sometimes it works, but most of the time you're not offering anything different.
Right.
So you got to be looking at what I bring to the market.
So no differentiation there,
Absolutely.
right? So you're going with that, just jumping on that bandwagon.
Yes.
All right, brilliant. All right, that's great. So just a quick follow-up before I've got something lovely lined up. I know you're also a Junaid Jamshed fan. I've got one Junaid Jamshed lined up as well. Nasheed by Junaid Jamshed, again, one of the ones that I really, really like. But before we do that, just a very quick one on that. Your first experience was more of a branching out scale-up operation.
That's right.
Okay, so where you're replicating what is being successfully done in the Middle East somewhere.
Yes.
And by someone who you trust, who's done it successfully.
Yes.
Having his guidance
Yes.
and his support, and you trying that somewhere else in a different geographic location.
Absolutely. That was the idea.
And that's where the calculation came in, because you thought to yourself, right, I've got all this support, I've got all this learning already, and I can, and of course, probably I'd say limited financial risk.
Yes, of course. So when we use the word calculation, so we need to bear in mind, we're not just talking about the financial side of things. We're also looking your time, how much of a time you can spare out for those things, and what opportunity cost you're looking at that. If you're not going to work on something else, if you're going to work on this thing. Another thing which comes into calculation, you rightly pointed out, is the experience. For me to go and try out and source something, let's say making it from China, if there's already process which exist and somebody just going to guide me through that, this is where you need to source your products, this is where you need to get them packaged, that's your pricing model should be like. So those calculations made it look like a less risky opportunity rather than me starting something absolutely brand new and then trying to bring that product into the market. So when we talk about calculations, it's the calculations not just on the financial terms, it's also the time, and it's also the guidance and the experience.
And risk.
And the risk.
And the risk.
Absolutely.
Yep. Brilliant. Yes. That's a fantastic view of it. Don't just jump straight into it directly from Mr. Mohsin. Do your calculations, ladies and gents. Junaid. You're listening to Heritage Radio. My name's Taha Hussain, and this is Coffee with a CEO. Khurram, we should really have some coffee here.
Yeah, if that's the name of the program, then we should have the coffee.
We should, shouldn't we? It's besides the point. We're not having coffee. You love coffee. I love coffee. Where's coffee? Right. Good to have you. Khurram is here joining us today. And we talked a bit about the inception, about the idea before the break. And we had some Junaid Jamshed in there as well. Mera dil badal de. So if you're tuning in, you're in for a treat, ladies and gents. Khurram, tell me something. Let's talk about some of your startups that you've started from absolute zero.
Yep.
Right? Brand new, new ideas.
Yep.
We've talked about your inspiration, and I believe that usually the inspiration is the same, right? Regardless of the startup, most people have their own gig.
Yeah.
They want control of their life. Some people want to be their own boss. Some people want to get away from the 9 to 5. Some people want to get away from their kids, and that's why they start something. Whatever the reason is, if people have got their reasons, and usually speaking, that's their reason for a startup. We've heard your reason, which is good. I understand the idea of having a tree, having this seed planted and seeing it blossom.
Yeah.
Which is great. And we've talked about your calculations and how you looked at risk, how you looked at financial side of it. You looked at the learning experience side of it. You looked at the logistical supply chain side of it. And then based on those decisions, you took a plunge. But that's where you played it safe.
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about something you started from absolute scratch.
Well, I've been involved in a medical tech startup.
Okay.
And when I say involved, I looked after the tech side of things. And then it was, again, I can see that there's a pattern here. It was because my wife comes from a medical background. So she had an idea. We identified a gap in the market, and then we had another partner, and then she was also from the medical background. So they looked at the gap in the market where a medical startup could actually help fill in that gap.
Okay.
And it was literally, again, going down the same path. Before we said, right, we're going to do it. It's a brilliant idea. No, let's just take some time. Think about it if somebody is actually offering the same thing already.
Okay, so you do market research.
You do your market research.
Okay.
At times you do a market research because you find out that somebody's already well established. They're doing everything fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
And you question yourself, what value do I bring if I just get another player in the market?
Okay, so how will you stand out?
How will we stand out? Why would somebody come to us rather than someone else unless I haven't got anything different to offer or a better service? So we did our market research and we found out there's definitely a gap. We can do something around it. And then came the whole technical side of challenge because I come from I have a degree, as I said, in computing science, and I've been working in IT consulting for almost coming up to 16, 17 years.
Mm-hmm.
So
Giving away your age again, buddy. On live.
I was
on
very
air,
young. I was very young.
You've heard it first here on Heritage Radio.
The date of birth's not going to get exposed today, but yeah, you can guess it. So that was a medical startup, required a lot of research. One thing, again, when we look at the market, we say that, we can fill in that gap.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, you don't realize that how many laws and then how many things you need to adhere to before you can bring that thing in.
Right.
So that thing almost took, I would say, about 18 months.
Oh, wow.
18 months just to understand and overcome the challenges that where we can actually bring this thing in.
Right.
So sometimes you will have an idea which you can bring it, but then you realize that because, of course, when you could talk about the medical startups and then how the patient's data can be handled and what advice you can give and what you cannot, UK is, of course, very regulated country, and so is the most of the Europe and Americas as well.
Right.
So if you're going to get into that, then we spend a lot of time how we can actually satisfy those requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And that was even before we look at the tech side of things. So again, these are the things we learn. And what I learned from my other business, which I did before back in 2013-14, which was primarily in the retail side of things, a lot of learnings from that actually helped in this one.
Okay.
But then again, with every business, there comes new challenges.
All right, let's talk about those challenges.
So after spending about 18 short months, we had the prototype of app up and running.
Okay.
And then this was going to...
No, I'm going to stop you there.
Yes.
Just before you get to what was your first step? That app is 18 months down the line.
18 months down the line,
right?
yes.
What's your first step? Right. So you thought you had this, you've done your market research.
Yes.
You've identified this gap in the market.
Yes.
And then you've said, okay, we're going to go for this.
Yeah.
You've done all the work that needs to be done. I'm sure you would have done a business model or a business case study.
Yes.
And now you're at a stage where you're saying, you know what, we're going to take the plunge.
Yes.
What's your first step?
So the first step is that how we actually enter the market.
Okay.
That was the first step for me. There are two different ways to look at it. The startup culture in America is that you get into the market and then you look at everything after that.
Right.
So, whatever the challenges and whatever the laws you haven't adhered to, you'll take care of that afterwards. You just need to get into the market. You want to be the first one.
The Uber approach.
The Uber approach,
okay,
yes.
Fair enough.
You get in, and then, of course, if you're having some lawsuits against you or there are certain bugs and there are issues and everything, you'll deal with that later.
Okay.
Because the startup culture in America is quite different. Over there, the approach is you want to be the first one in the market. So then you get all these investors coming in, then you can invest in it, and then you can refine it, and then you can, your phase 2 will look far better than what you originally looked when you come in.
Right, so alpha, beta versions.
Alpha, beta version.
Okay.
And this is their agile way of working. And this is quite successful, I would say, for startups because the startups do not have the luxury of spending time and time. You mentioned about the business model. And I've seen quite a few startups, and even for mine one, the business model was literally very basic. It was very, very basic.
In technical terms, that's called a lean business model. If you're
Yes.
wondering, that's a basic way of saying we were broke and we didn't have any money,
Yes.
and we still had a business model. It's called a lean business model.
Yes.
Okay.
So yeah, that's a very nice word you just defined. Everything you're not going to do properly, you just say we're doing it in a lean way.
In a lean way.
And yes, well, when you get to the actual gist of it, you realize that it's basically just doing the bare minimum.
Right.
And sometimes not even doing things.
Right.
So for us, I was initially, the reason we spent about 18 months was doing a lot of analysis, a lot of thinking, what we should do, how do we satisfy these requirements. The government requires us to have these certifications before we get into anything to do with the a medical tech industry. And then at the same time, I was speaking to a good friend of mine who's based out of States, and he's in Orange County. And he just said to me that, look, you got to change your approach. And I said, why? And he said, you need to get into the market. Once you get into the market, let's say you got 100 people who sign up, 98 of those actually don't like it. You learned something.
Right.
So rather than perfect your product and then bring it to the market, you just get into the market and then learn from the market itself.
Which is in a way called A/B testing.
A/B testing, and it's quite different. You can't do it with, I would say, with the physical thing. So you can't launch a car, or you can't bring a watch to the market, and then you know that it has got lots of fault. I'm not going to name a few cars which actually has done that. But, you know, mostly you go and buy a car, you know that it's going to be reliable, it's going to work. But when it comes to tech, it's slightly different because you need to get into the market because your audience is billions of people. You're going to learn a lot because what we do is a lot of startups, especially in the tech industry, we have this vision. We identify a problem, and we say that is the solution, and we then bring it to the market. But not everyone sees the same thing, what we are seeing, right? We might be too focused because we love our product or idea so much that we think, oh, the day it gets launched, everyone is going to sign up. And then you go into the real market and you know what? No, the homepage is not right. People are not going to submit their data. There are other challenges. So for the tech startup, so for my retail business, which was the first one, I learned that, yes, your product needs to be perfect. But I learned something completely 180 degrees on the tech startup. Don't worry about your product. Bring it to the market. As you said, alpha, beta. You understand from the people why people are not signing up, what challenges they're having through the journey. And you learn from that, and then you improve it. So, yeah.
Which is another way of saying, let the market decide.
Yes, let the market decide. Let them flow, yes.
And the market is the best judge of all.
They are absolutely indeed.
And if you put something out in the market,
yes,
generally speaking, it is the market that defines whether or not your business model is successful,
yes,
whether or not your product is successful, and whether or not you need to pivot in your business model. It will be the market that decides. Get it out there,
yes,
right? And especially in tech, where you have this opportunity of being able to do your A/B testing, the earliest opportunity, the better. Stop trying to perfect what your product is.
That's right.
And just get it out there for testing sake. And then, of course, you can change it, you can revamp it, you can upgrade it, you can remove the bugs, but you can do so when the market dictates. Is that a fair assessment?
That is absolutely fair. And just to put into perspective for someone, some of our audience, that pick up any of the YouTubers, right? Any of the YouTubers who've got followers in millions and millions. Go and look at their first or second video.
Right.
They did not have the perfect lighting. They did not have the perfect mic. They just went out there, and then they gradually improved. So this is my view, that when you're looking at a product-based startup, you need to focus on your product because that's your product or service. It needs to be quite good. But when you're looking at a tech startup, you go in this repetitive approach. You go into the market as early as possible, get the feedback, improve, and then you just keep that cycle going. That's what you need to do. For the tech, do not spend too much time thinking about it. Like I said, I learned after spending about 18 months that I needed to go into the market. And what I learned after we launched, what I learned in the first 2 months was, I would say, way more than what we learned in the last 18 months.
All right. But to do that, and we're just going to take a break after this, but to do that, do you need to keep your ears close to the ground?
You do. Well,
You got to be able to have a mechanism in place
yes,
where you not just put the product out there,
yes,
but once you've had the product out there, what you're also doing is have a mechanism, a system where the feedback is feeding into you
yes.
so that you can make those changes, right?
You got to, and then you got to be. It's a very painful experience for anyone going out there, because it's like somebody telling you that your child is ugly, right? You spend 2 years.
That's one way of looking at it.
you spend 2 years of building something.
Right.
You absolutely love it. You
Right.
take it to the market, and the response you get, you have to accept it then.
Right.
That's the only way to avoid the failure.
Okay.
So what the market say, as you rightly said earlier, that market dictates. You look at the market feedback, and then you adopt an approach. A number of times people just say, nope, my idea is brilliant, I'm not going to change it. And they just stick by it. The other way to look at it, you got to be flexible. If you need to change something, yes, you do. And then, yes, you get that through that whole feedback, which you need to make sure that you're getting all the feedback. And you got to be absolutely decoupled from your emotions. That I built this thing. How can someone say that to me, that this form doesn't look right, or this app hangs? Yeah.
Right. We'll get to the emotions after the break. When I say break, well, we're going to do a very nice, guess what, another Abda Parveen in there.
Wow.
I'm going to do as many as we probably can
Yes.
get before I get into trouble. We'll slip in as many Abda Parveens as we can. But just to summarize before we go, and this is very strong, very powerful. Number one, make sure that you get your product out there as early as possible. Number two, make sure that you're not trying to perfect your product before it's out there. Let the market decide. Let the market dictate whether what the product is worth, what the product needs to be, and what changes are required.
Yep.
Once you've done that, keep your eyes to the floor, your ears to the floor, and eyes if you can, and ensure that you are taking in that feedback, okay? And make sure that you implement that feedback so that you can get that product improved and back out there for another round of testing.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Brilliant. Fantastic. So, Abda Parveen, what we'll do is we'll let you, after Abda Parveen, we've got the news, which might kick in at about 8 o'clock. And after the news, we'll come back and we'll talk about emotions. And this is going to be interesting, guys. I'm telling you, we're going to be talking about skepticism. We're going to be talking about the emotions, the issues, the challenges, the dynamics of things. So stay tuned to Heritage Radio 90.6 FM, DAB online, Alexa, and on the app. You're listening to Taha Hussain. This is Coffee with CEO. We need to get a coffee. We really need to. Next time you're here, we're going to get a coffee and sit down with that cup of coffee.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. And this is the second episode of this show, a place where dreams take the mic and success stories unfold. I'm your host, hopefully your guide through this incredible journey of entrepreneurs who've dared to dream and turn those dreams into a reality. Today, the special treat we have for you is Khurram Mohsin, who's been sharing with us all of his incredible journeys and how he's turned some of his dreams into a reality, and of course the challenges that he's faced along the way. So get ready for this roller coaster and buckle up and let the entrepreneurial magic begin. Khurram.
Hi, Taha.
How are you doing?
Good. It's going well.
Still with me?
I am indeed.
Let's talk about emotions. This is going to sound a bit like therapy now. So just before the break.
Yes.
When I say break, I mean the news and you know, all the bits that you got to cross all the T's out. Just before that, we talked about emotions. Tell me this. When you started your own gig, okay, now think about all the businesses that you started, all the startups, whether it was that scale-up operation in the Middle East and Europe that you mentioned, whether it was this fintech, whether it was the retail business, and we'll get to some others as well, more recent, more current ones as well.
Yep.
But tell me this. Did you face any skepticism? Did people around you in your social circle, friends, family, co-workers, okay? We're obviously decoded that
Yeah.
the main cause for all of this is the misses. So that's not where you're going to get the skepticism from. That's obviously that encouraging hand, which
Yeah.
is brilliant to have in a partner. But apart from that, social circle, friends, family, co-workers, did you face any skepticism? Did you have people coming up to you and saying, Khurram, what are you doing? Why are you wasting all your time and money? Okay, you're earning good money in your consultancy.
Mm-hmm.
Focus there. Why do you want all of this? Did that happen?
It does. It does happen to,
Okay.
I would say, everyone.
Okay.
And before it begins from outside, for me, it was always from inside.
Okay.
So in the morning, I'm very excited.
Mm-hmm.
I know that this thing is going to take off. And then, you know what? You're just thinking about it. You're lying down on a beach in Dubai, and then there's supercar parked outside, and then all the dreams you see from the successful people, and you don't see the journey. So yes, all excitement, everything. I'm gonna have my own name out there. My company's doing so well.
Right.
All these things you're thinking in the morning, and then the morning hits you. Then the afternoon hits you. You come across the challenges. You come across the issues, and then you deal with them. And for me, as I said before, anybody else could have that skepticism. It was myself going to bed at night saying, what I'm doing,
Okay.
why I'm doing this.
Okay.
Right.
So double guessing yourself.
Double guessing yourself.
Okay. All right.
And then just questioning everything you're doing.
Okay.
What you need is you need a good night's sleep, and you do need people around you, whether it could be your parents, could be your partner, could be your friend, could be a colleague. You need to have someone who can give the assurance that, you know what, you're on the right path, and then, yes, you can do it. You need that, not just from inside, but from outside as well. Because now going back to your original question, did I face that? Most of the times, your friends are very nice to say anything to you.
Okay.
So you just go and tell them, this is what I'm going to do. And they'll be like, okay, we wish you all the best. And we hope it works out. Same thing goes with the parents, with the family. But then somewhere you start to see that people are doubting you.
Okay.
And then because some of the things, for example, as I talked about the tech startup, that took about 18 months. And then people start to question, what exactly are you doing from the last 18 months? We haven't seen anything. We haven't seen a result. And then is it really worth your time? And then you go into the self-doubt. And then that's where you require reassurance. So yes, emotions play a big part. You go through that, and any CEO, any person who's running their own thing, where they are the one directing which way things are going to go, people will doubt you, and you will doubt yourself. At the same time, one thing which I've done, and it has helped me, is I always look back where I was, let's say, 2 weeks ago, where I am now. Are we making progress? Is it heading into the right direction? If yes, then yes, you're still on the right path. If you're still where you were a couple of weeks ago, you're not moving, then probably you need to change your strategy. But yes, emotions play a big part. And then, at least in my experience, I would say people learn how to mask, but everyone goes through that emotional roller coaster. When you're running your own gig, there's one day you're really excited, you're really over the moon. The next day, you're just going to be on the ground. This roller coaster just continues. So you need to have the belief in yourself, and then surround yourself with the people who believe in you. But at the same time, listen to what other people say. You will learn with time. And I think there's certain things which can only come with experience. After going through, for me, this journey has been over 10 years. And I've reached a point where I can tell whether somebody is just doubting for the sake of it, or whether they're actually providing some feedback, or they're pointing out some risks out there. But yes, emotions, it's a genuine emotional roller coaster being a CEO.
So, in other words, filtering through the criticism for the sake of criticism.
Yeah.
And criticism for the sake of genuine, constructive feedback.
Yes.
And once you filtered through that, take that feedback from the people you trust and incorporate that feedback.
Yes.
And on top of that, ensure that you've got the right people who are there in your support circle to support you and ensure that when you do start doubting yourself and start thinking, why am I doing this? Where is this going? What have I gotten myself into? And that dream of that Dubai beach and supercar is fading away into the distance. They're there to support you and console you and obviously give you that strength, that courage that you need to get back up, get back out there and ensure that you carry on. Is that a...
Absolutely.
Okay.
You've summed it up quite well. Yes. And another thing I was just going to add in here, a lot of times we look at successful people, we look at all these people who are leading big organizations, they've done fantastic startups. We're only looking at their success. And we don't look behind the picture, behind all the prep which goes on, and then how these people at times feel sad, and then they feel useless at times, and then it feels like a big failure. So I think that culture needs to change, or people need to really look into it. Just don't look at the success. Don't look at the point where they've reached. Look at how they've reached there. And then with the whole advent of people doing podcasts and being open about their things, people have started to open up quite a bit.
Right.
So it really helps. So the reason is because if there's someone listening out there who's just thinking, right, I'm going to start my own fintech, or I'm going to go and launch a product or something. If you feel like a failure one day, that's fine. That's absolutely normal. It's okay to feel that way.
Okay.
And then these emotions will hit you. They will hit you hard. But then you just need to get up the very next day. And then you need to go back and then keep working on what you believe in.
So be mindful of the emotional roller coaster.
Yes.
And ensure that that you are prepped and ready to deal with the highs and the lows of that emotional journey.
Yes, absolutely. Everyone talks about, and I think I missed that point as well, everyone talks about the finances which are required for a startup, the technology which is required for a startup, but nobody talks about the mental strength and resilience which is required for a startup, because that's more important than anything else there. You can have the right technology, you can have the right amount of money, but when you're going to go through that roller coaster for the very first time, when you're going to hit the highs and the lows, that's where you need to be prepared to take the right decisions. Because suddenly you realize that I'm in this roller coaster, but at the same time, I'm the one actually who's operating the roller coaster as well. So I can either stop it now.
I like that.
I can either stop this one right now, or I just carry on with this journey because I believe I can see through to the end.
I like that. You're on a roller coaster, but guess what? You're in the driving seat of that roller coaster. Okay, I like that. This is good. On that note, we're joined by Khurram, who's been talking to us. Well, it's been an hour and a half now, Khurram.
It is.
How are you feeling?
Still very energetic.
Oh, lovely. Let's talk about that energy, shall we?
Yes.
Let's talk about that energy. Before the break, we discussed loads of those challenges. We discussed emotion, skepticism. We talked about how did you overcome them. To summarize, you talked about, well, number one, make sure that you have a filter between criticism for the sake of criticism and criticism as a constructive tool for feedback. Once you have that filter, make sure you have people who love you, people who support you, the right people surrounding you, because there will be days when you have highs and lows. It is an emotional roller coaster. And we said, well, you're the one running the roller coaster.
That's right.
And there will be some days where it's going to be a challenge for you to get out of bed and get on with it. And you need the support of those people to, help you, support you, get you out, give you the strength, the energy, the support that you need through this journey. There is always skepticism. People may ask you, people may question you, or your motivations, your logic. For doing what you're doing, okay, especially if you have a stable career, stable income, stable life. People question, are you nuts? Why? What is the logic for it, right?
Yes.
and then you've explained more so it's coming from inside.
It does.
Okay,
Yes.
so that was before the break. Now, what I want to talk to you about, Khurram,
Mm-hmm.
is growth. Now, thinking back to, and I'm sure you don't have to think back a lot because now you're currently involved in a startup as well that I'm aware of.
Mm-hmm.
What was your approach? Whichever example you want to take, whichever startup you want to take, what was your approach once you launched your product? And we discussed launching in great detail, and we talked about A/B testing before the break. We talked about getting your product out there. We talked about letting the market decide, and we've done all of that. But tell me this: you've now got your product out there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a success initially.
Yep.
Now the question is, how do you scale up your business? How do you expand, right? Because, of course, if you've got a successful product, you can't just sit there and think, you know what, I've got a successful product. It's going to take care of itself. Because it's not, is it?
No. You're absolutely right. Scaling is an interesting one. I can probably take a couple of the examples on a few things which I've done. There's certain places. So, for example, I'll use an example of something which I'm currently involved with.
Mm-hmm.
I've been running it for a couple of years. It's in the food and hospitality sector.
Okay.
And then when I started, we were doing X. And then it was like, okay, we perfect the product. We perfect the customer services. We make sure that people keep coming back to us. So we build that rapport, we give them we go the extra mile, all the cliches, we keep doing that. And we kept doing that, and we just increased our sales to where we started to about 2 to 3 times.
Okay.
And he was like, okay, that's really fantastic. I'm making good profits. It's going brilliant. How do I scale it further?
Okay.
And then you realize that for certain businesses, there is a ceiling.
Ah, that glass ceiling comes in.
Ceiling.
Okay.
Exactly. So, for example, if you're a food joint or if you're selling a coffee shop or something, if you're open in a certain area,
right,
even if your coffee is the best one in the area,
right,
there's only so many people who are going to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Even, let's say, you're so brilliant that all the other coffee shops are not doing well and then everyone is coming to you. But then you're going to reach a point, and after that, you can't scale that one up.
Okay.
Where do you go from next?
So how do you identify that you have now reached that ceiling? And there is absolutely nothing you can do within that same geographic place, right?
Yep.
So I'm not talking about new options, new branches and whatever.
Yeah.
That same place, that same outlet, how do you know that within that outlet you've now reached maximum output? How do you identify that?
So for every business, it will be different.
Okay.
These days, you have different delivery platforms. You go on there and then you see there's certain key metrics you can actually ask for. And then you can see the number of orders the other outlets are getting as compared to yourself.
Okay.
It's easier. It's not impossible. It's easier to find out roughly the sales figure for the other competing businesses in your area. So you look at that. And then, of course, you also look at that. Where did you start?
Okay.
And then you look at your number of returning customer. Are you keeping a retention? Is it still growing? Are you still getting new customers?
Okay.
And then if you reach a point where, let's say, when you start, 90% or let's say 95% of your customers are going to be new one. And then in the first couple of weeks, you got about 5% retention. So 5% are your repeat, 95% are your new ones. And then you keep adding and keep adding and keep adding. And then you reach a point where you're not getting any new customers.
Okay.
But your retention is pretty good. So let's say if you're getting 100 orders a day, 90 of those orders are coming from your repeat customers. So you know that your product is good and those people are still keep coming back to you. But then the new customers are not getting. And then you look at your sales figures from where you started and where you are now. And then you compare it with your previous year. As I said, you look at the market data in terms of how busy the other places are. And if you feel that you have reached a point based upon the numbers, and I think this is very much a numbers game in this one, rather than just a feeling one. From a numbers game perspective, you're not losing your customers, but then the new ones are not coming anymore.
Some would say that that's a business stagnating.
It does reach that point.
Okay.
And then what I'm trying to say is that if you look at, so for example, if again, we'll use a generic coffee shop, and just for the record, I don't actually own a coffee shop, so that's why I'm using it as an example. If you got a coffee shop and you know that within 1 mile, you've got 4 other coffee shops.
Okay.
Based upon the online delivery platforms, based upon the data you can pick up from the company's house, you can work out how much the other businesses are doing.
Okay.
And then you can find out how much you're doing, of course. You need to know that how much you're doing. And then the number of people who drink coffee in that area is not going to drastically change.
Okay.
Right? There will be people who come maybe from the certain area, but let's say there are about 10,000 people who just go past those coffee shops and that's what they take. You opening up and you may be adding some extra flavors. You may add up some new customers, but that's not going to drastically change.
Okay.
So what you're doing is you're taking some of the existing market share.
Okay.
And then once you reach that point where you believe that I've taken enough share, and then the people who are loyal to that brand, they're loyal to that brand. That brand is still doing that much. This brand is doing still that much.
Okay.
And there's nothing more I can add in that area. And these are the things which are actually defined by the geography. So these businesses reach a point, and after that, unless you keep adding new things, there's not much growth you can get out of it.
Okay. So let me summarize. Here's what I'm hearing. You identify all the possible opportunities for growth. Once you identify them, you go out, whether that means operational efficiency, perfecting your product, giving a good service, ensuring that you're getting the right feedback, incorporating that feedback, getting the right reviews, which is very important in food and beverage sector these days, because everything is about reviews. Everything is on all your delivery platforms, Deliveroo, Just Eat, Uber, all the platforms that you've got. Getting the right reviews, and then ensuring that you build a strong foundation of loyal customers that you retain day in, day out. They are your bread and butter.
Yes.
And then you go out and try and get as many more as you possibly can. And of course, that there is a limited number of people everywhere in the world. And so you're obviously trying to take some away from your competitors. You understand that some of them will be very, very loyal to them.
Yes.
And that there's nothing you can do to persuade them to come over to you. But the others, the swing votes, as they say, those people, get them on. But then when you get to a certain stage, after doing your research, not going by gut, after doing your research, understand that there is going to be a ceiling for every business. Well, not every business, but for every, let's say, in a food and beverage sector where you're based around one location, it is going to have a limit. That limit could be because of, or that ceiling could be because of the number of people you can sit. The number of people dine and eat, the number of, let's say in our example, and we know it's not a coffee shop, it's actually a pizza shop, but the number of pizzas you can make. It could be something to do with, of course, at a certain stage, your oven can't take any more, or at a certain stage, your staff can't do any more. At a certain stage, you can completely, it's impossible for you to make more, even with more staff, because of the space issues. And of course, let's not forget that there is a certain limit on the number of customers within the area who are your potential segment within the market. You are affording customers, people with disposable income. And once you've gone through that, then you've hit your ceiling.
Absolutely. I think you summed it up really well. And then you highlighted something about the operations, which I can give you an example. And I'm not sure, I'm not the only business who's done it. I'm sure the other businesses have done that as well, where we have to slow down the sales. Because it started to impact the quality of the product we were giving out. Because there's been times where we've reached of course, every business do the promotions and stuff and to drive the customers in. And we were doing certain promotions. And one time we realized that we were getting so many orders that we creating a bottleneck on the oven. We were creating a bottleneck because we could not physically prepare that many orders in an hour.
Okay.
And that, as a result, because we wanted to get all of these orders out in an hour, in their own time.
Okay.
And then that was actually slowing down the usual time we get an order out to the customer. So the customers were waiting longer.
Okay.
The quality was not as it would be. So, for example, if you're making 10 pizzas in an hour, you're just perfecting every single pizza. If you're making 90 pizzas an hour, you're just going to rush through things. So that is the time where you realize that you actually have an operational bottleneck, because there's only so many coffees you can make in a coffee shop in an hour. There's only so many pizzas you can make. And if you're reaching that limit, you sometimes do that. And we did that as well, where we actually took off the promotions because we wanted our sales to slow down. But it's a very fine balance. You take off the promotions, then some of your loyal customers start saying, wow, you used to give this promotion out. You're not giving that anymore. I'm going to go and try out someone else. So it's not one size fit all. It's a very hit and miss.
Okay.
It applies. What applies to my business is not going to apply the same thing. You can use the generic principle.
Okay.
For example, stuff around focus on quality, focus on customer services, make sure they get the value for their money. Those are the things which apply everywhere.
Okay.
But whether you want to have this promotion to drive more customer in. So some people say that I'll keep small margins, but I'll have more customers in. We have taken a slightly different approach, that we rather have less number of customers coming in, but have good margins,
Okay.
and have the customers which are loyal to us, because they're the ones which keep coming back. So it varies from one business to another. And as I said, I did not learn it anywhere, rather than just actually trying it out myself, what works for us and what doesn't work.
So is it fair to say, again, a bit of A/B testing there, seeing what the market is doing,
yes.
reacting to that,
That's correct.
and then changing your approach?
Yes.
A bit of pivoting the business model. Who wants to sell less? Right? You don't want to sell less.
Exactly.
As a startup, as a business, you want to sell as much as you possibly can.
Yes.
But having the insight, having the understanding that just sales, or which is what we refer to in financial terms, gross revenue isn't what pays the bills.
That's
Looking
right.
at gross margins instead.
Yeah.
Is that a fair way to say that?
That's a very fair way to say. And I work with a franchise, and they actually have over 150 branches now.
Okay.
And I looked at something very interesting. I was looking at some of their data, and then a number of stores I've seen, they start at a very high sale.
Okay.
And then over 3 months and 6 month period, the sales start to decline. Whereas in my store, we started with a low sale, but we keep going up and up and up.
Ah, the trend.
The trends, you look at the trends, and
Okay.
the reason for that is a number of stores, when they opened, what they wanted was, from the very first day, they want to make thousands of pounds. So yes, it's a big bang. They're offering promotions. They're getting lots and lots and lots of customers in. But what's happening is, when you're serving a lot more customers, your quality is definitely going to go down, no matter what you do. If you are running at 120 miles per hour, if you're on full throttle, there's going to come a point where your engine is going to overheat, right? You remember that when you're in a business, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
Okay.
So sometimes you take it slow. And again, it varies from person to person. The approach which I took, and alhamdulillah, it's been 3 years. We're running it quite successfully. We decided to take the approach that whoever tries our product loves it and come back.
Right.
Rather than people come to us only because we're cheap, we're new, and then they try it first and they're like, no, I'm not going to come back. Because in the food and the beverage section, in the retail, in the hospitality, it's what you give your product that decides how the customer comes back.
So quality, not quantity.
Exactly.
Okay. So big takeaways from that. Guys, if you're listening in, again, amazing advice from Khurram Mohsin. You're listening to Heritage Radio 90.6 FM, DAB, online, Alexa, on the apps. Some amazing takeaways from that. Just before we go and listen to Hasana by Ahmed Bukhtiar. just brilliance on the side of understanding what your ceiling is in relation to your sales. Now, once you've managed to identify through data, not gut, through data what your ceiling is, then you're looking at operational efficiency, because that then gives you your gross margin. Now, if you're wondering what gross margin is, that's your revenue minus your expenses, right? Your revenue minus your expenses gives you your gross margin. Of course, there's a difference between gross margin and net margin, and I'm not going to bore you with that. But just imagine, one business is looking at doing as much sale as possible. Now, that's good for a startup. You've got loads of cash coming in, but you've also got loads of cash going out. What is your net position? That is given to us by what we call a gross margin position. Or in other words, more technical terms, that's called your operating cash flow. Focus on quantity. Focus on quality, not quantity. That's the approach. Not for every business, okay? But for Khurram, that's been the approach. And of course, ensure that when you reach that position, by data, you understand, all right, this is it. This is what you've got to maintain. You've got to retain those customers so they keep coming back to you. You've got a strong foundation. The new customers coming to you, that's a cherry on top. That's phenomenal advice. Khurram will be here with us. We're going to take him deep today, all the way to the end. Khurram, I've got one more question for you. Mm-hmm. When you started your business, and I'd imagine this pizza place that we've talked about, mm-hmm. I'd imagine you didn't do it all yourself. Did you hire people?
Yes. It was a mix, I would say. I have been blessed in terms of I had a very good support from a number of my friends who were there for me from the start, and they really, really helped it out. Okay. Because physically it was difficult for me to be there all the time. Okay. Because I haven't left my consulting work, so I was still doing that. Mm-hmm. Plus, I started this work, and then there are a couple of other gigs going on in the side. So yes, I had a lot of support from my friends, but then again, they can be there to supervise things. They can do to look after things. But yes, we went for a massive recruitment drive where we did recruit over about 15 odd people to start.
Oh, wow.
With. Yes.
Okay. 15 people.
Yes.
So how did you manage that? Where did you look for them? Let's start with that. Where did you look for them? How did you get hold of these people? What did you do? Did you do interviews? What was the process? What are the challenges of getting a team on board?
So what I did was brilliant stuff. I delegated it to two of my friends to do the work.
Oh, I like that.
That was the easiest thing for me to do. So they offered some support, and I was like, you know what? If you really want to support me, then I cannot take the time out. And why don't you guys help me out? But they did a fantastic job. It was not easy, quite painful, I would say, hiring the right people. People can have the right skill set, but then if the mindset does not match with your organization's mindset, then they cannot fit in. Mm-hmm. Especially when you're in a work where there are going to be a lot of people, they're all new, they don't get along with each other. Those things can be a challenging thing. We went literally everywhere. A number of recruitment websites, we advertised on them. We went to Facebook and then other places and then asked people around, put a poster out there. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I think if I got the right number in my head, my friend must have gone through over 100 interviews just to find those 15 odd people. And after 5 weeks, out of those 15, I think another 5 just left.
All right.
So
it's not about. Would you say it's not about hiring the right people? Would you say it's about ensuring that you retain them?
It is. What I have learned, my advice to anyone going out in a business, in a startup especially, is get the people who may not have all the skills, but they're willing to learn, and their personality, their mindset is aligned to your organization. Okay. And then those people will learn.
How would you know when you're hiring them? At the outset, how would you know?
It's difficult. Okay. It's a trial and error thing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when you speak to people, if you've done, as I said, if you've done hundreds of interviews, then you can start to pick up certain traits, you can start to pick up certain signs, but that's very subjective.
But we know people are good at giving away those signs in interviews, aren't they?
Yes, people are. And then those are the people. So some people who are giving it away naturally, those are the people you're right pick. But then some people who can actually fake it during the interview, you'll find out. And there's a reason the whole probation period exists for these people. Is because you hired them, they've been fantastic in the interview, you get them on board, and 2 days later, either they're going to walk out or you just tell them politely that, look, you're fantastic, but probably you're not the right person for us.
Did you have to let go of some yourself?
Yes.
Was it difficult?
Well, I have to do this work not just here in my startup, in my consulting work as well, where I have to tell people that that's the end for them. It's always very difficult, but you need to keep your mind on what are you trying to do. Sometimes, as I said, emotions can come in. Again, you go on an emotional roller coaster. You don't want to tell someone that they've just started a job, and then a week later you're telling them that, I'm sorry, you have to go. I have to let you go. But then you do it because you're looking at the bigger picture. If they're not the right person for your business, then you have to let them go. And then sometimes you even have to do it with the people who are close to you. So, for example, there were a couple of friends involved as well who worked out. And then sometimes you even have to go and tell them, because your focus here is not to build friendships or not to build people, get to know people. Your focus here is to actually someone who can deliver for your work.
Right. So even if it's someone close to you, someone you would call a friend,
yes,
when the time comes, you got to take the right decision.
You got to take
the difficult decision.
That's exactly. You got to take the right decision.
Did that affect your relationships?
If you can explain,
okay,
then it does. Whatever people say, yes, it does impact straight away. But then as long as you have been open and honest, and you make sure that the other person doesn't get it personally, you explain the reasons. They may feel it bad for a week, 2 weeks. Maybe some people keep the grudge for months, but eventually it suits out because they start to understand your point, why you made the decision.
Quick comment on team dynamics. Issues between them?
There are.
Okay.
There is no team out there which does not have issues. And once again, because this title is so lovely, CEO, but the amount of pain and then the amount of challenges which comes with it, nobody talks about those ones.
Right.
But yes, because you're the CEO, then you are the one eventually responsible for everything. So even at times where people will just bring personal grudges, and then it starts to impact your work, because those people are working together, as you said, team dynamics. You have to step in. You have to take the right decision. And sometimes you have to leave your friendships outside of your premises, because once you're inside, you got to work. Great
stuff. Don't go anywhere. You're listening to City Heritage Radio on 90.6 FM. We're going to continue after the news, the weather. Don't go anywhere. Remember, we'll carry on talking to Khurram. Keep on learning these lessons from him. When we come back, we're going to be talking about his greatest failures, his greatest successes, and I've got a trick question up my sleeve. Let's see if we can get him in trouble with that question. Don't go anywhere. This is City Heritage Radio on 90.6 FM.
Heritage Radio.
Strengthening the Ummah.
Lord, you give us the sun, you'll be up to the night. You give me the bread I eat daily. Now I'm happy alive, cause someday I'll get married. And for this I'm so thankful. I wanna say thank you for my mom. She was my angel. You taught me love, you taught me patience. I learned from my pains. You're so amazing. I've gained and I've lost. Your love is a lassie. When I look what I got, I look what you give me, and for that I say thank you. Next, thank you. Next, I say thank you. Next, for what you give me, I'm so grateful. Yes, thank you. Next, thank you. Blessed, I say thank you. Blessed for what you give me. Spend my time with my friends. I ain't worried about nothing. You alone, no one else. All your past life for passion. Oh yeah. Every day when I sin, Lord, you wash it away. You showed me your mercy. Forgive my past. You taught me love. You taught me patience. I learned from my pains. You're so amazing. I've gained and I've lost. Your love is all I see when I look what I found. No need for searching for that.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم ويتفكرون في خلق السماوات والأرض ربنا ما خلقت هذا باطلا سبحانك فقنا عذاب النار ربنا إنك من تدخل النار فقد أخزيته وما للظالمين من أنصار ربنا إننا سمعنا مناديا ينادي للإيمان أن آمنوا بربكم فآمنا ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار ربنا وآتنا ما وعدتنا على رسلك ولا تخزنا يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
Broadcasting to the British Muslim community across Manchester and the Northwest on 90.6 FM, DAB digital radio, online and on Alexa-enabled smart devices.
Check it out. Come on. This is Heritage Radio.
Heritage Radio, Manchester's first 24-hour Islamic radio station with a massive audience reach, is looking for radio stars. If you think you have what it takes to become a radio presenter and make a real difference, then come forward. We'll provide you with full radio and broadcast training and you'll learn tomorrow's radio today. Simply call 0161 883 2266. That's 0161 883 2266 during office hours.
If you've just joined us, this is Coffee with a CEO. Though we've identified we don't really have any coffee. This is a place where dreams take the mic and success stories unfold. I'm going to be your host and hopefully your guide through the incredible journeys of entrepreneurs who've dared to dream and turn those dreams into a reality. Our special treat today is Khurram Mohsin. Khurram, who is a serial entrepreneur, and we've been discussing with Khurram in the first couple of hours of the show how he's delved into so many different startups from starting off with a scale-up operation or a branching out operation rather, to fintech, medtech. We've discussed some retail businesses, and now we're on F&B, food and beverage sector. Khurram, assalamu alaikum again.
Wa alaikum assalam, Taha.
Khurram, tell me this. We were talking about our teams before, and the dynamics and the challenges that you faced. And of course, we talked about friendships. We talked about building your team, some great advice there, decoupling decisions with emotions. That was brilliant, very powerful. And of course, understanding that certain relationships, they may be strained, especially if you're involved with friends or people you know, family, especially. And it might be a while before you can recover those relationships.
Yes.
But difficult decisions have to be made. That's where we left off. Now tell me this. One word. Actually, make it two. Greatest failures. Be honest. Greatest failures.
It's always a tricky one, isn't it? To talk about your failures. So when you say one or two words, you want me to name something, or?
Well, that's one or two words for me, not for you. You can take 100 words to explain greatest failures. We don't mind.
Right.
That's what everyone wants to listen to. Everyone here has tuned in specially to listen to your failures, Khurram. You're on air. Go on.
So the greatest failure is not realizing when to let go of things and then just carry on with things. And that actually has led to one of the businesses. I won't go into the details, but you just carry on, you keep believing. And then there comes a point after that, you know that deep down it's failed, but you don't want to accept it. And being a CEO, you don't want other people to find out that you have failed.
Oh,
right?
The shame.
The shame which comes with it.
Is it fair to say ego?
Somewhere it's ego.
Okay.
Somewhere it's shame. Somewhere where what other people are going to think about it. And then, if you've done a couple of good gigs, then people build this reputation of you that you're always going to be successful.
Okay.
And now